Good morning, good evening, friends. Welcome to my channel, Ek Kitab Se Ek Moti. Today I'm going to read a passage from this book, You and Your Network. I bought this book almost a decade ago when I was a personality development trainer. I felt the need to, learn from some of the most excellent thinkers of the world, and so I thought Fred Smith was a great thinker. He was a very wise man, and he influenced one of the greatest trainers or one of the greatest motivational speakers of his time, Zig Ziglar. So Zig Ziglar used to consider Fred Smith his mentor, kind of someone who shaped and really influenced Zig Ziglar a lot. I mean, he shaped the thoughts of Zig Ziglar, and he used to be one of the mentors of Zig Ziglar. So, let me read the title and the subtitle of this book. So, the title is You and Your Network. The author is Fred Smith. 8 vital links to an exciting life. What are these vital links? So, he talks about these principles of networking. So you first network with yourself, that's number one. Then second, your heroes. Third, your models, that is role models. 4, your mentors or mentors. 5, your peers. 6, your enemies. 7, your friends. And 8, your family. So he categorizes this networking principle into these 8 segments, or classifies them under these segments. But I'm choosing this passage from the first segment of this book, which is about you. Well, networking with you, in a sense, like how you would like to improve yourself, and how you're going to make yourself a person with whom you'd like to live. Because ultimately, the most time we spend with anyone is ourselves. I mean, most of the time we spend with ourselves. So unless we have developed ourselves, we might find ourselves to be a very bad and negative company. I mean, that seems to be a bit humorous, but what I'm trying to say is, some people have have left their personality so uncultivated that they won't like to spend their time with themselves. So they, run after these different modes of entertainment, or they always want to be surrounded with people, or they want to be surrounded with some kind of event outside. For example, they spend time on television or movies or sports, but they won't like to spend some quiet time with themselves. I think there is a famous quotation from E. Stanley Jones. He said something like this: Wherever I go, I take myself. Wherever I go along. I go there myself as well. Or let me just rephrase it. I'm just trying to recall the exact words. Wherever I go there as well, and spoil everything. That is, I take my personality with myself wherever I go, and therefore I spoil the whole thing. That happens when we haven't cultivated our personalities. So anyhow, that was a brief introduction to this segment called You in this book. So I'll show you how this looks. So you have all these 8 things that are mentioned here: you, your heroes, and so on. So I'm going to read a passage from this segment, You. So it's titled Maintain a Development Program. Reading makes a full man, Francis Bacon. Do you live in a neighborhood of truly interesting people, even great ones? If not, would you like to? You can when you surround yourself with the books these people have written, and those written about them. Better to read their books than to talk with them. I mean, that might seem a bit counterintuitive. I mean, is it better to read someone's book, or should we prefer the actual presence of that person so that we can have a dialogue or some kind of conversation with them? Better to read their books Better to read their books than to talk with them, for their writing is more carefully thought out than their casual conversation could ever be. Would you like to talk with Einstein? Oh, okay, so there is a reason, why it's better to read someone's book rather than have a casual conversation with them, because what Fred Smith thinks is that their writing chances are that their writing would be more carefully thought out than their casual conversation. Would you like to talk with Einstein? Then open a book of his essays. Had you rather listen to Emerson? He's in the library at your convenience. If you long to be a more complete thinker, then you must read the holy books of all religions, as the vast majority of great thinkers have done, whether they believed or not. Do you need courage? Then read the second most read book ever written, Pilgrim's Progress. John Bunyan wrote this when he was in prison, I think. Or you might want to know more about human nature. Is there a better source than Shakespeare? Now, just as an aside, Tolstoy had a very negative opinion of Shakespeare. He thought that Shakespeare really didn't understand people, and he thought that Shakespeare was a very poor writer. So if you are interested, you can just Google this. Maybe you can say Tolstoy's views on Shakespeare or something like that, or Tolstoy's critical essays on Shakespeare, and you'll get all these essays that Tolstoy wrote. Tolstoy was a very sincere and honest man. He wouldn't just make any very flippant comment about someone. Flippant, I think. Let me check the meaning of that word. Yeah, so the meaning of flippant is marked by disrespectful levity or casualness. So Tolstoy was a very sincere, honest, and very serious thinker. And anything that Tolstoy says is worthy of being thought about, or it deserves careful attention and careful thinking before we reject his thoughts. So if you're interested in what Tolstoy thought about Shakespeare, you can read some of his essays. If you are in the mood for profitable entertainment, then you have all the choice in the world. Reward yourself with the company of the greats, or the pleasantness of the interesting, those who have written as they probe the secrets of science, travel to remote places, thought the great thoughts, or watch the human parade pass their vantage point, join them and be blessed. So what Fred Smith is saying is that one great way of developing ourselves and also using our time well is to read good books. So some of the books he suggests are these: Emerson's essays, Einstein's essays, and Shakespeare, his plays and poems and poems. I mean, this word is pronounced in many ways: poem. Some people pronounce it as poem, 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 and so I prefer the pronunciation poem. So you can read the poems of Shakespeare, or that is his sonnets. But Tolstoy was very critical of Shakespeare. He thought that Shakespeare did not understand human beings. You can read the holy scriptures of all religions, and you get all these great characters that you encounter in scriptures. And you can read any other book that you prefer. For example, the happenings around the world. I mean, books on current affairs, or books on science, books on travel. People who have traveled to distant places or remote places, you can read about their adventures. When I was in college, I read about a guy who traveled the world. I mean, he in a boat, actually. He just kind of had a small motorboat, or was it a boat without a motor? I don't remember, but he traveled the world in a boat, and that was a very interesting story I read. Now I don't remember who it was or when it happened, but that appeared in the Reader's Digest. Now in college I used to borrow some of the old editions of Reader's Digest, so they used to have all these beautiful stories from the past. So that was, I think, almost 50-year-old edition of Reader's Digest, I think, or maybe 30 or 40 years old edition. And I used to read some of those old editions of Reader's Digest, and there was a story of a man who traveled by boat around the world. So how he used to face some very difficult times when he was traveling the ocean, like when it was absolutely dark and there was no one to be seen, no human being, even, there was no land to be seen at all. It was just water everywhere, and the sky, above. So it was an excellent piece of writing that I read when I was in college. And yeah, what I'm trying to say is reading good books is a great way of using your time, and it develops your vocabulary, it develops your communication skills, and it also develops your understanding of human nature. When you read the Holy Scriptures of the world, you'll see that there are two types of characters mainly that you'll encounter. There are some people who act as warnings for you, so you just try not to imitate them or try to avoid what they did. And there are some examples that you find in Scriptures, so you are encouraged to emulate them or to follow on their footsteps. So that way you can really develop your personality, and you understand what you should do in order to do well in life, and what you should not do in order to live a peaceful life. So I think these are the things that I wanted to discuss on this passage. Now, just a few words about Fred Smith himself. So he was a very wise man. He was actually an executive, I think. He worked with Maxey Jarman. He was a great businessman of his time. I think he was the owner of an apparel company. Is that pronunciation right? Apparel. He owned an apparel company. Now, I don't remember the name of that company. Apparel, clothing. And he, I think, also owned a shoe company. So he used to manufacture shoes. He wrote a book on the Holy Scripture of his religion, and he, Maxey, I'm talking about the boss of this person, Fred Smith. So his boss wrote a book on the Holy Scripture, and he said, just like I test products, in business, like before considering them final or before releasing them in the market, I test my product. So he was testing his own religious scripture. I really like that book. I had it, and I bought it from a second-hand bookshop that is not in India. I got an imported copy from Amazon. So Fred Smith was a very interesting man, and he surrounded himself with very interesting people. So I recommend this book. Just buy it and read it. It has several other very interesting things. And let me see if I can read something else from this book to you. So he has all these interesting quotations at the end of most of the chapters in this book. For example, better a friend with a bad habit than a mean temper. Respect is the only perfect bridge between friends. So you'll find all these nuggets of wisdom, or gems or pearls of wisdom, scattered in this book. It is better religion to be kind at home than to pray in church. These apply to all religions. Isn't it better to be kind at home instead of visiting all these places of worship? So it's not that he's discouraging visiting of these places of worship, but what is more important in life, and shouldn't we display all these great qualities that religion encourages us to display? Then praise is the steam that rises from a warm heart. So it contains excellent nuggets of wisdom. So I recommend this book. You buy it and read it, or you can also download an online copy. So I saw an online copy on archive.org. So just to recapitulate, the most important person in your network is yourself. So you are going to spend most of the time with yourself. you are going to spend the entire life with you and with yourself, and you need to cultivate your personality in order to remain at peace with yourself. And one way of cultivating your personality is to read great books. And some of the books that Fred Smith recommends are these: Einstein's essays, Emerson's essays, The Holy Scriptures of All the World, Shakespeare, The Pilgrim's Progress of John Bunyan. And you can add any other book written in modern times to that list as well. Thanks for watching.